Okay, people. Coming in to your living rooms. Getting ready. So excited. And here we go. Are you ready for this? Boom! Hello! Welcome everybody to my studio here in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. You can see things are slowly changing behind me here. I'm trying to clean the space up as much as it's nice to see the complete chaos of the studio around me. Just a little bit of a backdrop, but I'm still in the exact same place, and after this I'm gonna iron out all of the seams, but and probably do a little bit of changing with the lighting. Anyway, my name is Michael Markowsky, and I'm going to be your art instructor for about the next hour here. And if you haven't checked out the first two videos that I made last Tuesday and last Thursday, they are there on YouTube for you to view at your leisure as many times as you like, and you can pause and start again, and you can share them with your friends. In the link, there's a link down below here that has a link to the whole playlist, so you could bookmark that onto your browser, or you could send it to a friend and say, hey, or you can also send them the link to the Facebook page if you want to RSVP that so that you can get updates. And I'm thinking I'm also going to post little reminders going, I think, from today's class going forward about little homework things that you could do too. So whether you want to do them or not is totally up to you. It's just that I know some people really want to get really involved, and it's great because there's so many people who are tuning in and watching right now. So I want to encourage you as much as possible without being pushy, because I want art is my passion in life, and I want to share it with you. And if I can get just one more person on the planet drawing in a consistent way, then that would be a major achievement for me personally. So let me see. I've said my name, right? And all the social media links are below. If you are finding this content that I'm about to begin in 1 second here useful, please like the video. That helps it show up more often. Subscribe, hit the little bell so you know when new videos are coming up. And if you're feeling generous and you'd like to support this channel and all of this free education, you could send a small or large PayPal donation in the link below. Okay, all of the business out of the way, and we're going to get started here. You know, one thing I just thought I would mention, maybe right off the top, since here's a couple of books that I found really helpful throughout my education as an artist. And these are actually two books that I read before I became a teacher. And then since I've become a teacher, these are two books that I assign my students at Emily Carr University, where I teach. And let's just say this book here, The Creative Habit, is great because it talks about the different kind of routines that artists have to become successful. And an artist is a kind of fluid term. You know, you could be a lawyer in the day and then come home at night and be an artist, right? Even though I went to school, I got a master's degree in art, you don't need a formal education to be an artist. So there are descriptions in here of people who are have different concepts of what an artist could and can be. So it's not always about somebody who's full-time making art like myself. This other book here, Art and Fear, is a fantastic book. You know, it's a tiny, well, thin book. I make all my first-year students read this book. It's kind of like reading People magazine. You could read, there's like, I think 12 chapters in here. You could read each chapter in about 30 minutes while you're sitting on the toilet or something. But it's really inspiring. So 2 great books there. Okay, so I just wanted to point those out because I keep thinking, I have them here on my counter. Let's talk about these, and then at the end of every episode I forget. So, we've got our sketchbooks, and we've got our pencils. We've got, if you want, an eraser, a couple different kinds. These are the kinds that I like the most. We've talked about all those different things in the past. And let me just see the kind of pencils that I have in hand, just within arm's reach. I've got a couple of HB pencils and a 4B pencil. This 4B pencil is going to come in really handy in a little bit, but I'm going to put it aside because we won't, and you don't need it for anything we're going to do. And again, you can do everything we're doing together with a tiny little, those little yellow golf pencils that you get at the golf course or the library. And I hear some golf courses are opening up around the North America, so maybe you could sneak onto the course and grab a pencil if you don't have one at home. Okay, so what we want to do today, what we're going to focus on is we're really going to learn the fundamental exercises that you need to know in order to create a believable drawing that looks realistic, that it has the illusion of 3 dimensions. And if you've been in a coffee shop and you've seen a picture of a lion on the wall and thought, wow, that's a really cool photograph, and then you get up close and you realize you could see the pencil marks, you could see the kind of the shine of the graphite, and you think, whoa, that's amazing, that's so incredible. Well, what we're going to learn today is the main things that you would need to know in order to do that, to do some rendering and shading, to create the illusion of volume on a flat piece of paper. And we're also going to continue this next class, and we're going to really build upon that. But for our purposes, this is going to be the introduction. Now, before we even get to that, what I want to do is spend the first maybe 10 minutes doing a warm-up exercise. And these warm-up exercises are something that I practice all the time, and I would encourage you to even practice these on your own, and maybe while you're waiting for the show to get started, you could do a little bit of this in the future. Okay, so let's dive right in here. I'm going to bring up, let's say, this view, and bring it down. Okay, so to warm up, I'm going to fold this here. To warm up, the first thing we can do is, let's try just doing some cursive E shapes, right? Even I've noticed the first time my pencil touches the paper, it's a little bit hesitant and wobbly. So we want to get those little hesitant marks out here on this page rather than when we're trying to do that big drawing that we're super excited about. Right, so let's try it again. And I know some of you are like, oh God, really? This is what we're going to be doing? Whatever, logging off right now. That's, well, it's a free country, right? But I would just say that doing this, and actually now I'm going to go back the other way. So doing this, I always compare to like a dancer doing some stretches before the big show, or a soccer player stretching their legs and doing a little warm up before the game, rather than running on to the World Cup final with just right out of your business suit and right onto the field if you were doing business right before the game. Okay, so going left to right, and so you can do this as many times, and actually maybe I'll also vary. I'm going to make some tiny ones. Let's make some bigger ones. right? It doesn't have to be a nice, pretty, like it looks like a stitch or a seam on a dress or something. It can be really, really, feel free to go faster and slower. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to now flip it upside down. And I'm going to try doing some of these. All right. And to even take this another bit further, we can even go, okay, let's go upside down. So what we're doing here is sort of we're getting our mind into the process of drawing, and we're also getting our hand kind of used to holding the pencil. Now the next thing, if we want to add to another level here, is let's imagine there's a mirror in between here, and I'm going to try to recreate this drawing. Again, this is kind of like that exercise we did, 10 minutes into the very first episode where we drew the face. All right, it's kind of tricky, right? And I'm looking at my marks. There's a little bit of hesitancy here. I'm still warming up, so I'm getting it out onto the page right now. Okay, so we've done enough of that. The next thing I want to try doing is doing some circles. So try just doing a few circles. Like, look at mine. You can't do worse than these circles, right? I'm going across the page. I could try doing some bigger ones. I could do some small ones inside, right? Maybe I'll do a few kind of touching this edge like that. Now, so that's fine. Usually, when people are holding a pencil, and if they haven't been doing a lot of drawing, then they're used to writing a circle and making an O or a 0, right? So usually when you're writing, you have a kind of a sort of pattern that you follow each time. You start in one place and end in another place, right? It's always the same, no matter what. If you're writing the O in hello or the O in donut, right? Starting the same place. But in drawing, it's not always so nice and structured like that. And often we have to be really flexible. So sometimes we want to start at the bottom and work our way clockwise around, all right? And then sometimes we want to start at the bottom and work our way counterclockwise around, or on one of the sides and work, so what I'm doing here is varying the starting and ending places. And you might find instantly, whoa, actually, you know what? When I start my O or my 0 or my circle at the right side and I go clockwise, it actually, I'm much better at drawing a so-called perfect circle that way than the way that I normally do it. And that's really important because it's all about finding the way that it comes most naturally to you. And the way that comes most naturally to you is not always the way that you've been doing it for 10, 20, 50 years, right? So we're always, as I'm drawing, I'm kind of questioning, is there a way that is easier for me to do this? Okay, so let's try a few more. This time, let's do some spirals. Right, so we're starting maybe from the outside and working our way in. Let's move this up. And then maybe I'll start from the other direction and work my way in. I'll do a few of those. And then, of course, we can start in a different place and go in every direction. We can even start in the center and work our way out. And then, let's see, we'll go this way. All right, so practicing these are really helpful. Now I'm starting to feel like more attuned to the pencil here. I feel like I'm locking into the feeling of the pencil on the paper, which is all good stuff. So we're questioning where we start, trying different things each time and seeing where that takes us. Beautiful. Great. This is a nice little warm-up page. Next thing I want to do is we're going to practice drawing some lines, and I can't tell you how many times I've been at like a cocktail party and somebody finds out I'm an artist, like, I can't even draw a straight line, I can't draw a circle or whatever. It's like, well, how often do you draw lines? If you haven't drawn a line, except when you're underlining, you know, the something on your rent check, or, you know, then you're probably not, you're out of practice, right? So this is what it's all about. So let's try drawing a line from one side of the page to the other. Like, you know, not a particularly straight line there. Let's try it again. Okay, and you can see it's a little bit wobbly. Let's try now drawing this line really fast. All right? And then let's try drawing that line kind of slowly. And you'll notice neither the slow nor the fast are entirely accurate, right? The fast one is nice, kind of consistent line, but it doesn't have much accuracy. The slow one I did is maybe, you know, technically straighter, but you can see all this wobbliness in here, right? Now, neither one is right or wrong. It's just noticing that the speed that your hand moves on the page is going to affect the mark that is created, right? So sometimes a fast line works and sometimes a slow line works. Okay, so it's about finding what is the right line for whatever purpose. For this purpose, we're just trying to draw like a line going across the page, and I find, you know, it's different for everybody, but there is a kind of a happy medium there where you're going not too fast, not too slow, and you're getting a little bit of accuracy, right? So we can try that going in the opposite direction, because just like what we were doing with the circles, we're not always going left to right when we're drawing. We could be going right to left, up and down, diagonal, in all sorts of different directions. So we want to get our body used to thinking that way, that we're breaking out of the writing mode and going into drawing mode. Okay, so this works fine if we're drawing a line that is just kind of going from any old place to any old place, right? That's where, I mean, this is certainly, all of what we're doing is worth practicing, but we're going to take it to the next level. So let's put a little dot on one side. Let's put another dot on the other side. Let's move this up here. And then let's divide it in half with another little dot. And then divide it in half, each half in half. Right, so that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces, but 5 dots, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to try drawing some lines that connect the dots. And I'm going to show you my little trick in order to do this. To do this, what we want to do is to practice like what I call like a golf swing. Okay, I'm going to sneeze. Sorry if I just destroyed your eardrums. Whew. That was coming from deep inside. Okay, so what I like to do is, I've never golfed a second in my life, but I've watched enough golfing on the screen at some pub or restaurant to see how people, you know, and this is, I can't really do this, I'm going to do this on the table, is, you know, let's say this is your golf ball, right? And this is my golf ball up here. You know, people they've got their, and they kind of practice a few times, and then they step up, and then they hit the golf ball. Hole in one, right? So it's the same sort of thing. You want to visualize where the line is going to go before we actually do it. And that's going to give us more of a likelihood that we're going to be successful. All right, bridge the gap, and then I do it, right? Again, connecting these lines. And this also helps tell me kind of the hand movement required, and I can make any adjustments going across. Right? And maybe you can do it, you need just one and then you're ready to go, or maybe you need to do it 3-4 times before you feel comfortable. You know, having said that, it's not about being perfect. I need to make a t-shirt. It's not about being perfect. So let's try this again, right? We're going to bridge these lines. Mine aren't perfect. Oh, that's a good line. I like that. Right? And we go across. Now, as you see, I'm just adding more little dots on here. Let's try this again, but I'm going to go the other way, right? So I'm again bridging this gap. Oh, and you can see I missed the mark a little bit. That's okay. And that one's got a little bit of an arc in there. Oh, and that one kind of goes up and down. That's okay. Right? Because I'm probably, like most people, used to going this way and not this way. So it's just getting the mind ready. Okay, so after we've done this a few times, I'm going to, let's put a dot on one side, and then in the middle, and then the other side. And then we're going to try to bridge this gap. Right? So it's a bigger, canyon, wider canyon that you got to jump like Evel Knievel or something, right? So we're going to do that, and then you can do back and forth the other side. And then if you want, you could flip to another page. Sometimes people get all worked up about, like, oh, I don't want to use too much of my sketchbook for these warm-up exercises. So let's, I'm going to put a dot in the middle here, and let's see if I can go all the way across. Now, before I even get to do this here, I just want to kind of mention, most of the time people have their hand on the table, or the drawing, and it's locked on there. It's like your hand is on the page and you're drawing this way, right? If I try to do the line like this all the way across, I'm going to kind of go halfway, and then I got to pick up, and then I got to go halfway, and then I got to pick my hand. So that's going to, let's just do that, right? If I try to do that, then I got to go like this and like this. And yeah, that's not bad, but there's these kind of stopping points midway. I'd like to be able to do this in one long mark, and that requires having your hand not on the paper, but kind of floating off the surface a little bit. So I had a drawing instructor tell me years ago that that you want your hand to be floating over the page, and that drawing is a shoulder activity, a full arm activity, and not a wrist activity. Because if you're doing a lot of this wrist activity, your hand is really going to get sore. So your shoulder is much stronger than your forearm, or particularly your wrist. So you want your hand to be mostly just kind of still and your whole arm moving. So let's try doing this again. So now I'm going to try to go all the way across with my hand not touching the paper. Right? Not the best line. A little bit of a curve in there, but I'm still practicing, right? And oh, I missed it again. So it's just about getting, but it's not a bad line. It's just I'm going. It's easier to draw this line and you don't know where it's going to end. Just get in your car and you just start driving. Well, you're not going to arrive at the wrong place because you didn't have a destination to begin with. But if let's say we're drawing some kind of a shape, right? We want to connect these lines, and it's going to take a little bit of practice, right? So from here, what I often do for just a little bit of fun is let's just add a bunch of extra dots all over here. And again, you could do this on a nice fresh sheet of paper. I'm just showing people how we can kind of draw on a single piece of paper. Oh, we got a light bulb that just replace that battery in a second. So here, now I've got a bunch of these little dots. I'm just going to connect to them like this. And you can see now I got to move my hand in different kinds of angles. I might even be shifting my body a little bit. Right? I can turn the sketchbook, which again is totally different than writing. It would be absurd to turn your sketchbook or your checkbook to write, you know, something upside down, right? So I'm moving, and maybe it's easier just to rotate it all the way around. Whatever it is, right? So you could create some kind of crazy shape like this. I remember years ago, you know, when I was in art school, we'd go to a pub with friends and we would just do a whole bunch of dots on a page and pass the paper around, or sketchbooks, and then we would each try to like create a face or some kind of object image out of all the dots in somebody else's sketchbook, right? And that was, and then, you know, so you'd use the first 20 dots to create something, and then you could just draw anything over top of it to fill in the blanks. While you're finishing this up, I'm just going to replace this battery for 10 seconds here. Okay. There, we got our lights back. Okay. So, that's a pretty good warm-up. I think we're ready to progress to the next page. And I'll just as a reminder, so if I've drawn on this page, I'm going to flip it over here and then draw on this blank page. I could draw on here, it is empty, but I don't want two drawings, if they're really nice, sandwiched together and rubbing off on one another. So, let me see, what should I introduce next? Because I think we're nice and warmed up. Okay, so now what we want to do is we are going to draw what's called a value scale. And I'm going to, let's write this up top, value. Oh, exactly where my own face is. Okay. In fact, here, I'm going to get I think I got a different view here I can put up. Okay. Yeah, there we go. We got everything on screen at once. Just finesse that. Okay. And then I'm going to leave a little bit of a space. And then, just like we were just doing, I'm going to create a box here. And this box is going to go about halfway down my page. Right? Doesn't have to, look at these lines, they're not all pretty. If you're obsessed with perfection, then maybe grab a ruler if you feel you need it. But I don't think we're going to need a ruler. And I want you to practice drawing these lines. Anyway, so we've got a box. Let's divide the box in half. And the way that I do that is I just sort of, I'm going to visualize this. This might be harder for some people. I totally recognize that drawing, figuring out what is the middle could be a little bit tricky, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And then we'll draw our line across. And then let's do this again. Let's draw another line across. And draw another line across. And then I'm just going to, for our sake, label this, let's go A, B, C, D. Okay. And now, so we've got 4 rows, and let's make some columns here. So I'm going to we're going to now divide this in half. So let's draw a line right down the middle. Okay, and then let's divide this again in half. You can see they're not the same. That's okay. And then I'm going to draw it again. So now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. Let's now divide each column in half again. And then I'm just going to label these. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so now we should have 8 columns. Now we're gonna learn 4 different ways of doing hatching, which is a technique for shading a surface, right? So the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna color in let's say A1 here. All right, so I'm going to make this nice and dark. I just see in the comments here, Debbie is having some trouble. The screen says standby. Is anybody else having any problems watching the class? It looks like it's okay on my end, but I'd be curious to see if anybody else is having problems. Maybe Debbie just needs to reload her web page. I'm not sure. Okay, so A1. This is going to be the darkest dark, of a drawing. Let's say we're gonna try drawing a sphere later on, right? So the darkest part, I'm just looking on the screen, on this is somewhere down here, right? And then the brightest area is right up here where the light is hitting it. And we also have another highlight over here. So this, let's say, is going to be the darkest part. And then 8 is going to be the brightest part. So it's so bright that we're going to leave this blank. Now, what we want to do is, you can think of like we're going to make like paint swatches that you find at the hardware store when you want to get it. What kind of tint of paint do you want to get? So we need to bridge this gap between 8 and 1. Since this is blank and this is dark, these have to be gradually get darker from left to right. So there's different techniques artists have used to do this. The first one we're going to learn is called hatching. It's just the plain old hatching. And so we're going to leave 8 blank, and in number 7 here, let's put in, let's say 2 lines like that. Okay, so we're going from pure white to a little bit of noise. It's going to represent sort of like a gray. The next thing, we're going to reproduce number 7 in number 6, and I'm going just to add double the amount of lines in there. Okay, let's continue this forward again. I'm going to take all these lines, approximately put them in there, and then I'm just going to add extra lines in between. All right, I think you see where we're going with this. So let's just keep on going. All right, so we're going to add more lines in here. So now the 4 and 5 look the same, but I'm going to start putting some lines in between. All right, so it gets a little bit darker, and then let's keep on going. So now this time, instead of trying to replicate this, I'm just going to try drawing lines that are quite close together. Okay, and if one of the techniques artists use that is kind of seen as cliche is to squint your eyes, right? Is to pretend like you're sleeping and you're a little kid and you're sleeping and you're actually reading a comic book, and then you hear your parents coming down the hallway, and then you're like, pretend you're sleeping, and then you don't like, are they standing in the doorway or not? And you're opening your eyes a little bit, and maybe they can't see me, maybe they don't know my so you want to squint your eyes while you're looking at your drawing, and that's going to help get rid of the detail and allow you to start seeing the kind of overall level of value that as we would call this, right? We're making a value scale. And so if you're looking at that and you're like, okay, well, this actually needs maybe a few more lines in here to darken it. So I'm just going to put a few more lines over top. Okay. And then number 2, we're going to add even more. So I'm going to kind of oh, well, it still looks a little bit like 3. Okay, maybe it still even looks a little bit like 3. Squint my eyes. Now I go like, well, now my 2 looks a lot like 1. So you know what I gotta do now is I gotta darken this even more. I gotta get even darker. Right, and then I go, oh, well, maybe that's a little bit too dark, so I'm going to go back over number 2, darken that a bit. Oh, number 3 maybe needs a little bit more attention here, maybe a little bit more. Number 4, and so you can see it's about just trying to create even steps, like on a ladder or something. It would be absurd for a ladder to have a few steps that are that far apart and then one that is so big it needs another ladder to go across, right? Okay, so here's hatching. And just to be clear, when we're doing hatching could go in any direction. It doesn't have to be left to right, right to left, horizontal. It could be diagonal or vertical, etc. So the next thing, speaking of which, is we're going to do some cross hatching. Okay, so cross hatching is just like hatching, but we're going to take it to the next level. So in this instance, let's say 2 diagonal lines in here. And then, so this is left blank because that's where the light is hitting, let's say this sphere. And then let's do, for number 6, I'm going to add a few more lines. And I think well, actually, you know what? Sorry. This is why I have an eraser here. Got to make sure I get this right. Okay, so so we've got those 2 lines like that, and this time actually for cross hatching, we're going to intersect the lines the other way, sort of like we're like a fence, right? Like your what kind of fence is that? What's the name of that kind of? Anyway, doesn't matter. We're gonna do this again. So we're basically at the same place, but this time I'm gonna add a couple more lines in there in each direction. And then let's continue here. So in a way, you could also imagine like we're zooming out. Let's say we're taking a picture through a fence and we don't see any of the fence. And then they pull the camera back a little bit. Now we see a little bit of the fence. Oh, and now we see like a diamond shape. Now we're stepping further and further away, right? And as we do this, we're literally filling up the white space with all of these lines, and it has the appearance of the drawing getting denser and denser, right, and getting darker and darker. So ideally, when we get to number 1, right, this is going to be pitch black, right? So And then I go, oh, well, that's great, but now look, there's this big gap between 1 and 2. I need, so I'm going to go back over here. And I'm just going to darken a little bit. Right, it still needs a little bit more here. Okay, so, right, and then I realize, oh, well, actually, no, I was going to say, that's pretty good. I think that's a nice quick introduction to cross-hatching. Okay, now, which one do I want to show you next? Which one isn't going to drive you absolutely nuts? Okay, let's we'll start this one and we'll see how far you can get. So let's say number 7 here. Let's put a couple of little specks, and this here is stippling. All right. And this one, it requires a little bit more time. Now, you might feel like you want to start banging on your paper to do that. That's how little kids would draw, and it could, if you're drawing with a pen, it's going to ruin the pen, and it also doesn't have a lot of accuracy. What I'm doing is, and it's kind of hard to see, but I'm sort of making tiny little circles. I'm kind of just rotating my pencil really quickly in here. And I'm just filling this up. Now, as I go, I'm adding more and more little dots in here. And if I do want little tiny dots to kind of fill in between places, then you can kind of tap the paper. You could, if you want to, you could make the dots get larger as they go. There's no right or wrong way to do this exercise, because there are infinite ways of adding value to a shape or form to create the illusion of depth. Not only could you use hatching or cross-hatching or stippling, and we'll look at a few others in a moment, but you could instead, these could be little happy faces. They could be little triangles or stars. They could be, I mean, any shape you can imagine. In fact, you may have seen like ads on television or magazines that, let's say, are comprised. It's, it starts out on a photograph of, let's say, a family on a couch, and then the photograph kind of zooms out, and then we see 5 photographs on the screen, and then it keeps on zooming until we see thousands of photographs on the screen all at one time, and it goes so far that all of those photographs combine to create the illusion of somebody else's face, right? And then it says, our bank is, good for the community, and here's all of our customers, or so that's one way that like an advertiser could use this kind of technique, or I've seen artists use it and to create paintings. And so, you could see this is a slow process. Now, when I get all the way here to 1, I'm not going to spend the rest of the show coloring this in and making a black thing full of dots. I mean, that could take me a serious amount of time. So I'm just going to scribble this in, make it black, and then I'm going to go back over here. Now, this is going to take me some time to this is kind of a nice, even progression, and then it's like, boom, we run into a wall. It's not, this is like, again, like, this is the step that's too big of a gap between here. And I think you understand the process here, because this could take me another couple of minutes to put enough dots in there to make this a nice little jump. So I'm just going to move forward, but I think you understand the concept, right? So the last one here, just as a little bit of a is I'm just going to do a scribble And so this scribble technique, some people really, really like this. So we're going to, I'm just going to scribble in number 1 here. Like just fill it up instead of just kind of nicely. I'm just going to go in every different direction. All right, and fill it all up. Now I've got these spaces to get to bridge. So let's say in here I've got a couple squiggles, and they don't have to be the same pattern each time. Right, and I'm just scribbling my way in here to fill it all up. Okay. And then, again, I look at it and go, okay, well, this needs a little more scribbles in here. And then I got to go across. I find it easier to kind of go all the way across and then to decide, okay, I need to add a little bit more here and here, rather than trying to, do each one perfectly before I move on. Because you don't want to get to the place where you're at your darkest dark at number 5 here. And you're like, oh, well, what do I do? Things are going to have to get so dark here. I need to get some ink or something, or if you've heard of Vanta Black, check that out. Do a little Google search on Vanta Black after this. Blow your mind. That's the darkest black that's ever been invented. It looks so dark that shapes appear to, they've painted cars with Vanta Black, Vanta. I think it's like a copyrighted corporate name or something. But you paint a car with it, and all of a sudden that car just looks like a silhouette, and then people can't actually see the volume on the shape. Anyway, I digress. So let's now, these are 3 kind of different ways to create value, right? And value when it comes to drawing is, the different levels of value that we would add from white and the tone that goes here, or shade, depending on the shade is when we add black, tone is gray. Okay, so let's now, under here, we're going to add another row. Whoa, a wobbly row. And then let's add E. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Mine's all sloppy. The reason why I did this now rather than doing it before, some people would have a very hard time dividing a box into 5 rows rather than 4. There are ways to do it, but that's not relevant. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is, and this is going to feed into next week's lesson, is so far we've been using the tip of our pencil, right? We've been drawing with the pencil pointing right down onto the page. And that works really well for getting nice sharp lines. But, again, if that image of like the lion in the coffee shop I said, it was probably may or may not have been done using hatching or cross-hatching, stippling or scribbling or any of the thousands of other kinds of hatching techniques. This time, we are going to instead use the side of our pencil. And the way that I describe this, I'm just going to kind of draw this. You don't probably want to draw this, but just so you can see what I'm talking about. This, if I'm holding my pencil perpendicular to the paper like that, right, we get this nice sharp line. What I want to do instead is I want to hold my pencil as close to the side of the paper so that I get a wider line like this, right? And I can, depending on how much pressure I put, it can get darker or lighter. So like I've said a few times, it's like you put your pencil down onto the paper and then you turn your hand into like a machine that comes down, picks it up, right? And now we've got a pencil hidden in, it's like this claw. And once it's like that, you could hold your pencil like this. You can put your finger. I mean, there's no right way to do this, but this is the way that feels comfortable for me. Is I've got my finger in, kind of pointing down, and I can now press onto the pencil like this. So I'm going to start very lightly. So lightly, in fact, you may not even be able to see what I just did here on the paper, which is good. It's the subtlety in this exercise is what's important, right? So let's do it again. And there's two ways to go about this thing here. One of which is to repeat exactly what I just did, and then to go back over it again. You could think of this like putting a second coat of paint on something, right? So the first one, you know, it wasn't dark enough, so I go back over top. I think that's easier than doing what I'm about to do right here, which is to try from the first part to go. See, I didn't even do it quite dark enough, so I'm even having to go back over. So now we've got step, 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 and then we're going to come back in here. Rather than putting like 4 coats of pencil line on here, I can press a little bit harder so that maybe I need just to do 2 or 3. All right, and I just keep on going over this. And if I'm doing this well, then it's a very soft kind of line. I don't see these kind of hard lines that I saw before. And as I'm getting closer to the black here, I know I need to be pressing harder with my pencil, so I'm applying pressure onto the pencil this way. The other thing that I will do while I'm working on this is I'll rotate the pencil. So I can show you. I take it, and then I just sort of every once in a while give it a little twist. It's probably really hard for you to see that on camera, but I'll kind of like twist it a little bit so that I'm not always using one side of the pencil. I'm trying to kind of go all the way around. And actually, if you do this, what you end up doing is actually sharpening your pencil, because if you keep on going all the way around, your pencil is going to form like a really sharp point because you've been sort of like sanding all the sides down. You know, you can even just see how my body is changing in relationship to the sketchbook. Previously, I was kind of leaning right over drawing, right? Like you could see my head is now in the camera, right? I'm right over top of it. When I'm doing this, what feels most comfortable for me is to kind of back off, and I might even like hold my pencil even further away rather than being right up close, right? I'm further away like this. Now some people might find holding your pencil that far away, you lose a little bit of accuracy, but you will find you can get a softer mark. All right, okay. So we're about 55 minutes into the class. We're going to draw for about 10 more minutes, and then we'll call it a day. We're going to add one more row, and before you're like, oh, I know what exactly. No, you don't know what we're going to do. So just hold tight here. We're going to add F. What we want to do, oops, I'm going to bring that onto the screen. What we're going to do now is we are going to replicate this exercise here into row F, but without the these little divider paint swatch lines. So this is, and I'm just going to actually grab a different pencil that isn't quite so, because I'm going to need to sharpen this. You can see I'm running out of lead here. So I'm just picking a different pencil. If I want, I could actually, let's say, use my 4B pencil, because this is going to make a little easier. It's a little softer lead. So to get from here to here without these nice gradations, you know, I can start here. You can already see how different it is using this darker pencil, right? So I need to go all the way across here. So I am gently kind of going all the way across. And then I'm just going to kind of shorten my marks so that I'm not going quite as far each time. And so this takes some patience to do, because if you start getting really impatient, then you're going to press really hard with your pencil, and all of a sudden you're going to have like a dark kind of, like what's happened here, right? Where we see this very dark dividing line. So again, I'm just going to keep on going all the way across, nice and softly. Until we get all the way to this end here. I can even go right up to this edge here until it gets like really dark. And if you do have those little those areas where it's a little bit, you know, we have like a, you know, this is like a ramp as opposed to steps. And if you find you've got all of a sudden a little step in the middle of your ramp, then you want to kind of go back over and kind of gently color or you know, shade, which is what we're going to talk about next class, a little bit in there, right? So next to it. So you can see, even, I mean, this is not a big deal, but just let's say in my here, this little line kind of is, I don't even know if it shows up on the screen, is a little bit too dark, so it kind of pops out around it. So what I want to do is actually, if I try to erase this, it's going to cause me a huge headache, because it's really going to be difficult to kind of fix that area. So instead, I'm going to color everything but that line and kind of just go around it to darken the things that are next to it. Okay. So again, if I squint my eyes at it, I can see kind of a nice transition from one side to the other. Other techniques that you could use is you could take your finger and you could just kind of gently, and I'm not kidding you, I'm going really gently, like it's like I am petting a fly or something, right? And I am just brushing some of these pencil marks together. As I get closer to this side, you know, I can press a little bit harder. The 4B pencil is perfect for this because it leaves a lot of residue, right? You know, if I was trying to do this with the HB, it's probably not going to leave as much pencil marks. Okay. So, I think for there is where I want to leave this kind of an exercise for now. Trying to think if I want to show you guys anything else. You know what? Okay, let's draw for another 10 minutes, and then I swear I'll call it a day. I just love doing this stuff, so it's hard for me just to kind of, even though I said, okay. So this last thing, I'm going to another page in my sketchbook. And this time, let's draw. I'm going to make, just because I don't want to draw too big here, especially with, you know, in such a short amount of time. So I'm going to make, I'm going to move this here, you can see, this kind of series of boxes, and then let's divide them into 3. They don't have to be perfectly spaced. Again, don't sweat it. So with this, let's, we talked about making boxes before, or cubes, in our last class, right? So let's practice, just as a refresher, drawing a cube. And again, I'm going to start with drawing very lightly, so that if I want to make any changes, I don't have to erase so furiously hard. So I don't even know if you can, I might draw this a little bit darker, just so that everybody can see. But right, so I've drawn a cube here. Now let's imagine that our light source is over here. Right, I'm going to draw, here's a little light bulb, shining light, and it's coming all the way across here. So the lightest part here, this is where the light bulb or the sun is hitting this shape. So this side of the drawing we don't even need to do anything here. But the top and this side are going to be darker. So let's say this was level 8. This one, we're going to draw this, now I'm going to draw over top of these lines if I'm happy with where they are. So for this first one, let's use hatching. So on the top here, I'm going to add some lines. And then let's say this side is going to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to put some lines, again, just like I did on the top of that box. But I'm going to go in and make it bring these lines closer together so that they appear, it appears to be a different shade. And then let's say we've got our shadow here. I'm going to add a little box here, and this shadow is going to be much darker. This is going to be my level 1. Right, so we've got light hitting here, nice and highlight there, and then it's a little bit darker on the sides than it is the top, and the shadow's dark. Let's try this again. Let's draw another cube. All right, and if I'm happy with the way that looks, I'm just going to go back over my lines. All right, and then this time let's do some cross hatching. I'm just going to use it. That 4B is a little bit too dark, so I'm going to draw some lines over top. And then on the side, I'm going to do the same thing again. But these ones has got to get even darker than that top. You can see I'm going outside of the lines a little bit. Like, it's you don't have to worry about making it a perfect drawing, especially in an exercise like this. Sometimes I see people frantically cleaning it up, so as if the expectation is that it's the director of the Guggenheim is going to call you up and say, I liked those boxes you were shading the other day, that cross-hatching, it's gorgeous. We want to offer you an exhibition. Like, it's not going to happen, right? So don't worry about it. And But I have seen people, plenty and plenty of people, really, really worry about it. Okay. So we've got our hatching, got our cross hatching, and then we're going to use a blending method, which I should have written here. This is, I'll just write it on here. My apologies. Blending. And then let's draw one more cube again, and we're going to use the blending approach. Okay, so again, I'm going to use the side of my pencil, and I used the 4B before, but I'm just going to use, I have my HB, the most common pencil on the earth, and shade that. And then I look to myself and go like, you know what, Michael, you got a little bit too excited and you made that pretty dark. So that means if we're going to follow this example here, these other sides need to get even darker. It's like, oh, okay, oops. So maybe I should have just, you know, taken my own advice and gone a little bit. And you know what? So this is all instructive, right? I'm being, it's like, I'm like, oh, we're running out of time. I got to hurry. So I'm getting sloppy here, and I'm using the tip of my pencil rather than the side of the pencil. And you can see now I've got all of these pencil lines here. It's not the end of the world, but I'm just shifting the way I hold the pencil. And now I'm going to go back over top of this with the side of my pencil. And I can get rid of those initial pencil lines, especially because I'm darkening it up. All right, so I look here and I go, well, still, these are pretty close. So let's make a little bit more of a distinction here. All right, just keep on going up and down. Up and down. Until it becomes more clear the difference between those. And then we're going to put again another shadow in here. And if I go nice and dark, it's going to add as another contrast to those three shades, right? So that is the fundamental techniques that all artists use to create the illusion of depth of 3 dimensions on a piece of paper. So it is literally the application of this, you know, taking it to the next level, of course, that is why that image of the lion or a person's face or whatever it is looks so convincing and looks like a photograph, right? And obviously it takes a little while to get better and better and better at that, and that's what we're going to do on Thursday. We're going to start drawing some real shapes like this. But that gives us, this is the fundamental techniques that every drawer, and I would argue every artist, because I think if you're a sculptor or you're a filmmaker or whatever it is, I think you want to be able to understand these kind of things to help communicate your ideas a little bit more confidently. Even if you're you know, a lawyer and you want to be able to make it a quick little drawing to communicate something to a client, being able to draw not just a stick figure, and not just a stick figure that looks less like a stick figure, more like a person, but adding a little bit of value to it to show where the sun or the light source is, the shadow, just takes that little kind of, you know, flimsy little thumbnail sketch and elevates it, right? And then I'm telling you, people will look at you differently when you're capable of doing this kind of thing in any kind of little sketch. Like, whoa, how did you pull off? That's really cool. Okay, so that's going to conclude the lesson portion of today's class. I'm going to, I think there's a few people who've uploaded some photos. So I'm just going to take a quick look on the interweb here and see if I can find those and bring them up, and just so I can have a quick chat with you. If you have any photos that you'd like to share with me, please upload those kind of towards the beginning of class. That really helps me find them here. So I'm jumping on the Instagram. All of my social media is MarkowskyArt, right? So Markowsky art, right? And how can I see that? Oh, cool. Wow, unique. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can save these to a different folder here, so I'm not going into the back end of let's see, desktop. Let's put them on the desktop here. Okay, cool. You have been busy. My goodness. Okay, we got a couple cool drawings here. So I'll open these up, and then let's put them on the big screen. Okay, so Yannick sent some photos through Instagram to me. Oh, these look like they're a little bit grainy. We'll see how they show up on the screen here. Cool. I like this. This almost looks like a collaborative drawing. There's all sorts of, we got all these hands and faces and Yoda and a gecko and koi fish, plants, we got pipes and all sorts of stuff on there. That's really cool. This reminds me again, you know, when I was in art school and hanging out with all my artist friends, we would have all these big paper in the cover tables, and we would just take a strip off like that and go sit at a restaurant, and you know, we're poor starving artists, so we're sharing a plate of nachos, and this paper's on the table, and we'd all be collaboratively drawing like that. And so this is what this reminds me of, is kind of playing around, doing all this different drawing on one sheet of paper. You know, you can turn it around and somebody else is coloring something you drew and you drawing on somebody else's drawing. So I like seeing all of these images in here. That's really cool. And the message obviously is fantastic for our particular time. Wash your hands. We must wash our hands. And then here's a drawing that Yannick sent of a hand. You know, this finger pointing directly at the viewer or the illustrator in this instance. This particular viewpoint of trying to draw something, you know, or in this way pointing right at me, is probably one of the most difficult things to do. And it requires a technique called foreshortening, and we don't have time to get into it now. This is usually what I do teach. I usually teach 2 drawing classes. So I teach this class and then another class, and maybe I'll do this after this one. So we'll see how this works out a month from now. But where I teach how to draw hands and faces and people and all that kind of stuff. But to pull this off, I like the drawing. I think to make it even better, what we would use is that foreshortening technique, and what we would do is make that the index finger, is that what we call the pointy finger, appear larger, maybe 2 or 3 times larger than all the other fingers, and then it makes it look like it's jumping towards us. I'm trying to think. I think they use that famous like Uncle Sam, "We Need You" poster, you know, from World War II. If I look that up, I'm pretty sure they use foreshortening in that to kind of make the illusion that this finger is kind of coming right, like you can even see just as I hold my finger towards the camera like this, or even let's go to a different view here. If I go to this one and I'm pointing here, well, it's because it's out of focus, you're not going to really see, but if this hand, well, it's hard to see. I'm trying to do this off the top, but this finger should, you know, is if I could get even closer to the camera, would appear larger. Maybe actually this hand was even better. Michael, here we could see, I'm just trying to, this is ridiculous what I'm trying to do here. This finger, you know, looks, the tip of this finger should, this finger should look bigger than this finger. What am I talking about? I wasn't good. Overcomplicating things. Oh, great. So thanks for sending, and then we got one more, and here's another drawing Anique sent. I'm not sure who this kind of looks like, Gandhi maybe, and you're using the same kind of shading technique that we were just learning, right? And we'll talk about how to apply this kind of technique to drawing on shapes on Thursday's class. But it looks like you've got the kind of the essential concept down really well here, where some areas are darker than lighter areas, right? So this looks fantastic. I really appreciate you sending them. In terms of any kind of comments, I would say it does look like maybe one thing, just kind of a little passing advice here. You know, often when people are drawing, and we'll talk about this next week, but just as a preview, is a lot of the time people are always using their hand in this motion, right? And so we get a lot of these kind of marks, or these kind of marks. And I see this all the time. I see this in, like, famous artists use this and shade everything like this. I always find that flattens a form. So maybe even I'll just kind of quickly do a couple of shapes. You know, if I was to shade this circle this way and then keep on going around, right, I can kind of create a little bit of the volume. Oh, it's my almost 9-month-old daughter upstairs having a bit of a tough time. So instead of these lines going, what we want to try to do is kind of curving our lines, kind of going around this form. So instead of just shading straight across, I'm going to try to shade in a kind of a form that emphasizes the shape of this object. So it takes a little bit more time, as you can see. But if I follow this, it's going to look more like a sphere that's popping off the page rather than just simply like a circle that's laying on the page. So that would be my comment about how to add a little bit more volume to that drawing, because a lot of the lines were just going straight across. Okay, I don't know if anybody else sent me anything. What I'm just to do is go through the comments here really quickly. Look at all these happy people checking in. I love all the interaction here in the comments section here, and people like people helping each other out here. Heidi, did you send me any pictures, Heidi? Mary Ellen says, ready to learn another meaning for hatching that does not involve ideas or eggs. I wonder, it never occurred to me why hatching, what the origin for that term is in terms of drawing. It probably has some relationship to like stitching and fabric and weaving and stuff, like, which I don't know if in my mind I think of like hatching. Maybe there's some kind of, you know, to weave something, and this idea of, or maybe it's a farming or something about like straight long rows, because you have hatching is essentially long, or not, doesn't have to be long lines, but just parallel lines, right? And then of course cross hatching is to have lines going this way and then lines overlapping in different directions. Yeah, that's that. Steven is watching from Guelph. Yannick can send a couple drawings, and Debbie was having a question about the show airing at a different time. Okay. Oh, look at all these comments. Oh, so Unique was just saying maybe the drawing that you did of the collaborative drawing was for your co-op elevator. That's cool, for on the board in the elevators to remind people what to do. That's fantastic. I love the I see a lot of images these days, people making big hearts, and they're putting them on their windows and saying thank you to all the doctors and grocery clerks and women picking up the garbage, you know, the garbage women, and the janitors, and I mean, I could go on and on, all the people that are putting their lives on the line for us so that we can sit here and draw. I mean, we're very fortunate and grateful. I am certainly for those people. Ronald says this very enjoyable time dashes by when you're having fun and you're enjoying yourself. See you on Thursday. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why drawing is often why this whole new field of art therapy exists. Is it didn't take very long for people to realize, like, oh, if we just give people a pencil and paper, you know, often it just they're able to express themselves, even if they've had some sort of, you know, their vocal cords have been damaged or they've had some brain injury. You know, if you want to watch something really powerful, Google after this, I don't know what the link is, but you know, there's a video of like the power of music, and there's like this old guy in an old folks home, and he, you know, they're just like, this guy is brain dead, he's just waiting to die kind of thing, and they put on like some kind of old jazz record, and all of a sudden he just like perks up and just starts bouncing in his wheelchair, and he just starts kind of humming and even starts singing. It's just like, oh my goodness, it's making it's like it's really intense, like in the most positive way imaginable, because it just shows like how much you know, how powerful creativity is for every single person on the planet, right? I think if everybody was doing a little bit of drawing every day, like, you know, I think we'd live in a much more peaceful universe. So Heidi says, I'm not sure how to send more pics. I just put my Instagram on there. Oh, so maybe you had. And Sam says, which art school did I go to? I went to a lot of art schools. Where does I'm gonna go. Where's your Instagram, Heidi? I went to art school. I started at the Alberta College of Art in Calgary, Alberta, my hometown, where I was born and raised. And oh, these are really cool images, Heidi. I don't see any for our class. I'm not going to bring this up here, but anybody else welcome to check out your Instagram. You put it in the comments. I love all these, like a lot of gardening and these drawings of your dog, beautiful, and all these really cool sculptures. Love it. Love all this work. If you were to post some stuff about the drawings you did in the class, I'd love to see those, and I can give you feedback on those. I went to the Alberta College of Art. I went to then Cooper Union in New York City, which was right across the street from CBGB's, if you know where that is, in the East Village. That was quite an experience. That's a whole other long story. Then I went to the Art Center in Los Angeles, where I got my master's degree, and while I was there, I also went to the Royal College of Art in London, England, and the Royal College is right across the street from, literally right next door to Royal Albert Hall, which, if you're a Bob Dylan fan, is a pretty important moment there. It's where he plugged in and somebody yells, Judas! So I was a huge Bob Dylan fan, so just going to that school and being like, wow, this is like sacred ground. And then I've taken classes independently with Robert Bateman and done residencies around the world. And I'm not bragging, I'm just answering the question here. I have been very fortunate to have had great experiences and have had an opportunity to learn from a lot of other really great artists. And that's why I kind of feel I feel indebted to other people to share this incredible education that I've been so fortunate to receive. So okay, and so maybe I'll just answer one more question before we go. Peter has one more question. Can you talk about when I might use a different pencil type other than 2B? Great question. Let me, while I might as well bring up an image here. I think anybody who's still watching, there's still 26 people on the line here, so people may be so curious about this. So where is the handout? I think I put it in. Okay, yeah, here we go. Let me edit this here. Sorry, just trying to get all of this set up before I jump into the next page. Okay, so I'm bringing up this diagram, and you can see in the top left corner is why isn't it going full screen? Anyway, whatever. You can see the different weights of pencil descending from 8B down 7B, so forth to B, HB, F, H, all the way down to 6H, right? So the difference between an 8B pencil and an HB pencil and a 6H pencil is the density of the pigment and the binder that the pigment is held together inside of the wood. So an HB pencil is it's sort of like pH, right? It's, you know, like a pH scale, acidic and base, right? It's right in the middle. It's kind of the perfect happy medium, right? It's not too soft, not too hard. You don't have to sharpen too much, but you have to sharpen. It doesn't make too dark or too light of a line. It's easy to erase. That's why it's the most ubiquitous pencil around. Now, a 6H pencil is for, you know, it barely leaves a mark on the page, and often, like those lighter, like the 6H, 3H, etc., traditionally were used often by like architects and graphic designers, so that you could draw lines like on a piece of paper that may or may not be visible to people when you reproduce that image in, you know, I don't know the whole traditional printing process, but you might want to draw very, very lightly and not have to use an eraser. So you would use those harder pencils because then you can press even as hard as you want onto the page and it's still barely going to register a line. So some people who are like really heavy-handed, well, maybe you want something a little bit lighter so that you're not frantically erasing all the time. Because there are, you know, I would say when I teach these classes, there are some people who are so afraid of making a dark line on the page, and they're always drawing very lightly. And so I'll just like say, here, borrow my 4B pencils, borrow this charcoal, because it immediately takes you really, really dark. On the opposite end, there's lots of people who, like, they're just grinding their pencil right in and everything is super dark. And, you know, when we tried to do the value scale earlier, I'll just bring that back up. You know, there are people when they do the value scale that let's say this area here is like a 3, right? And so it's like they're already at the darkest point their pencil is capable of right here. So it's like, I'm like, okay, let's back off. You need to be a little bit looser, lighter with your pencil marks. So then why would we want to go to like a 2B, 4B? It's because it's softer, it's easier to draw. If you're doing a lot of drawing, you might even find like the HB pencil just makes your hand sore because you're having to kind of press harder on the page. If you're using like a 6B or 8B pencil, you're barely having to touch the paper while you're drawing to get like a dark line. And that can be really satisfying to just draw very lightly. It also smudges very easy. So some people love being able to smudge their drawing and they get messy. And then for some other people, it drives them crazy. I see people in classes and they're looking at their hand horrified. Oh, I got pencil marks on my, like, what do I do? It's like, of course you can just wash your hands, but some people just, you know, they get really worked up with their hands getting dirty and the pencil marks getting all over the place. So it just comes down to personal preference, what, how people want to draw. Jennifer Lawrence says, I sent a drawing I'm working on my aloe plant, trying to work on perspective. Oh, and she sent it to my Instagram. Let me see. Did you tag me or is it an email? Oh, here's a request. I'm gonna, oh. So, here. I'm just going to put this up here because I'm not sure what your email is or what you're intending to write, so I don't want to... why is that not showing up? Oh, okay, here. Save this to the desktop, and then I'll bring it up, and then I promise this will be the last one for today. I know there's people who are... still got 22 people watching right now. So let me bring that... Oops. Into the middle of the screen here. Oops, so back off one more. Save and bring this down here. Okay, so I apologize. I think you said your name was Jennifer. I've just so this is your aloe plant that you've been drawing, and I think you were saying, I'm just trying to remember the comment, you're having a little bit of trouble with the perspective. So, how can I show this all on one screen, all at one time? Let me see if I can do this. Let's see. How about I'm going to put this here? I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to put this there. Will this work? Can we do all three side by side? Okay. So, just how the kind of the problem that I see here is that you've got, let's say, this shape up here, and then this is kind of like your plant, the pot. The leaves on the aloe plant, I think, look great. I think what you could do is add a little bit more of this rendering of like shading, adding value into the shadows, because right now it's a little bit tentative, right? There is maybe we could go a little bit darker, especially kind of where the leaves of the aloe plant kind of intersecting, or the underneath. I think that could be darker. But if we come back to I think your question is, does this maybe look slightly awkward, or what's wrong with this? Is if we think, let me see, even just take like a bowl here. If I kind of show this, if I can see, let's see if I can see this on camera here. So if I see this top, and what's the angle you're at? It's kind of like that, right? So you can see this opening, and then this one, they are roughly the same kind of semicircle, right? So if this is going to be like this, then this bottom here will likely also have to be the same. And let's say maybe I should do this. We'll put a little dish under here. Right? So in other words, so and if I'll just kind of go over top of these lines. So it's about rounding this form off. Right? And so if this was a dish, oh, maybe I should have just quit while I was ahead here. If you keep on going over your pencil lines long enough, you can kind of hide any mistake. Okay, so what I think, just a quick and easy fix for your drawing is right now this bottom part is kind of just straight across and then rounded out, is I would just round this out and pull this up. So round it out, and I'll just use an eraser to kind of make the ultimate change here. Right, so that will kind of give the bottom of this cup a little bit more dimension. Right, and I think even, you know, this is kind of straight if we just pull this down a little bit. And that's not too hard. You could just, let's say, widen this line and just pretend that, you know, you have a cup that's got like a black rim or blue rim or something, right? So that you could kind of thicken this. And also, this is going to be thicker the closer it is to the viewer, and then it kind of thins out. Does that make sense? Oh, okay, let me see. I wasn't fully on camera the whole time. I think that should, but we're going to talk all about perspective and stuff in, is it next? Not next class. We're going to be talking about shapes, but then next Tuesday we're going to be talking all about perspective, and so we'll explore some of these concepts a little bit more going forward. Okay. It looks like we've certainly gone. We're getting close to 2 hours here pushing it. So I appreciate everybody who's been watching and staying with me for this long. That's super. Just personally rewarding that people are actually getting something out of this. If it is of value to you, please, I see all these likes. You know, there's 13 likes, but still 20 people who are still watching. For everybody else who's still watching, gave another like, that would help, you know, the channel and get more and more people to be watching. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell if you're feeling generous and you really want to show your gratitude. I very much appreciate a small donation to PayPal. $1, $100, $10,000, keys to your Ferrari. Nothing will be denied. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you on Thursday. Try to get a little bit of drawing done over the next couple of days. Practice some of the techniques we've done. Practice the warm-up before class begins. And we'll see you then. Bye-bye, everybody.